Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 51 of How Do You Write? I'm Rachael Herron, and I am so glad that you're here. Today's episode is with Erika Wurth, and I was very inspired talking to her. Also, I laughed a lot because she is funny, and we had a delightful time. I know you will enjoy. A little bit of catch up before we go into the interview portion. It has been bloody MFing hot in Oakland, and I know it is hot in many places of the world. It's just that in Oakland we don't have the ways to deal with this. We don't have air conditioning built into our houses in most places in Oakland unless you live in like a condo or something. And so every night our house has been like between 85 and 90 inside, and this is with all the windows open and the fans blowing it out when it finally cools down at night. It just hasn't been cooling down at night enough. So I have been a grumpy bear. I do not like heat. You may have heard me say that before. I did get a little baby air conditioner for my office, and that has been fantastic. I can't run it right now because I'm talking to you, and it sounds like an airplane is coming in to land in my office all the time. Which has the added benefit of being this kind of awesome white noise. And when I keep the dogs in here with me when I'm writing, they can't hear the outside world, so they don't bark. So we have the plane landing in the office, but no barking. So I've been enjoying working with that. What else is happening? Let's see. I did plot the next romance, and I've been working on that. So that is good. I accidentally might have started to replot the thriller, which is why I still don't recommend taking a proposal out on a book that is not complete, which is what we did. And it is not my favorite way to work. And I honestly don't know if I am stuck in, middle of the book panic, because everybody hits this point in the middle to the, 3/4 mark of your book that you believe it's just terrible. So one must replot the entire thing because all of your premises are crap. I can't tell if that's my worry or if it's true. So I'm sending that off to my agent, and she can help me deal with that. Did a lot of that yesterday. Also, over the weekend, I finished my basic sailing class. I almost didn't go because I was terrified. Friday night, I just started thinking about the winds that we had battled on the lake the week before and how hard it had been and how scary it had been. And I honestly wanted to chicken out and just eat the money that I'd spent for the class and stay home and read a book. And I didn't. I got up with a hangover, might I add. Let's see, and went to the lake and sailed, and I'm so glad I did. And I bring it up because it reminds me of something I feel like I do in my writing life a lot, which is face the dread and then push it to the side. I had so much dread about going to the lake. I knew that I would be miserable and scared, and I didn't want to. And I did it anyway. I just pushed it to the side. I did it, and I ended up having, no surprise, a fantastic time. It was great. I got signed off on my basics card. I can now rent sailboats on my own, which is crazy. They shouldn't do that, but I can. And I just had a wonderful day of excitement and joy and heat. It was, like 95 degrees on the water with very little wind. So I have now faced very, very high winds and very little wind. Someday I shall enjoy fine winds. There is another metaphor to go into there, but I will not go there now. Also, I wanted to mention that I've been reading a book which I kind of like. It's called The 12-Week Year. It might be good for some of you who have problems getting to your main work or deciding what you want your life to look like. I mean, this includes things like writing and or physical fitness and or your day job and or your relationships. The idea of the 12-week year of compressing goals into 12 weeks and breaking them up and looking at them as discrete units of time to act and actually get big things done in a shorter time frame without spending too much more time doing them is an idea I really, really like. I find that I'm already kind of doing that So the book is not quite as handy to me. I was looking for a brand new bullet because I'm always looking for the magic bullet. But you guys, some of you might enjoy it. Get it from your library. That's where I got mine. It's called The 12-Week Year. I'm always about their productivity tools and tips and tricks. You know that. So yeah, that's my catch up for the week. I can't remember if I told you or not. I might have said it on my other podcast, The Pedal to the Metal. But the big thing I was looking forward to, or hoping for, which was that my thriller was out with a publisher, requested by an editor who loved my work. So we were really excited. We thought the thriller might sell to her, and then it turns out she's actually going freelance. So that was a disappointment last week. I think I dealt with it in my newsletter, my writer's newsletter, not on the podcast. So that was disappointing to me, and that is actually why I was hungover on Saturday when I went sailing, because I was really hopeful. I allowed my hopes to get up, which is a hard thing to do in this business because they are so frequently dashed, and I'm pretty resilient. And honestly, I was almost relieved when we found out that she wasn't going to take the book because she's leaving the publisher. Because that meant now I can finish it. So I'm really excited about that. So now I'm back in the middle of two books, and which is not ideal, but so fun. What a great problem to have. And when the book is done, then we'll take it out wide, and my agent will handle that because this is a book we're taking out. I'm not self-publishing it. So that's where I am with that. That's kind of a lengthy update with lots of little things. So let's jump into the interview with Erika Wurth. I know you're going to enjoy it, and I wish you very happy writing. All right. Well, I am so pleased today to welcome Erika T. Wurth to the show. Hi, Erika.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. I will give you a quick little introduction for those who might not know you. Erika T. Wurth's published works include a novel, Crazy Horse's Girlfriend, and two collections of poetry, Indian Trains and 1,000 Horses Out to Sea. Her collection of short stories, Buckskin Cocaine, is forthcoming. A writer of both fiction and poetry, she teaches creative writing at Western Illinois University and has been a guest writer at the Institute of American Indian Arts. She is Apache, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and was raised outside of Denver. I have just started Horse's Girlfriend, and I'm just loving the language of it.
Well,
So,
thank you.
yeah, super, super enjoyable. I hear you have some dogs or a dog.
I can hear, yeah, actually, I should close the window here. We have a little dog, and she's basically, she's barky, but she's not too bad. But there are like 5 billion little dogs in the distance.
We have
And
the little dogs all around the house, and we have 3 in the house. So I'm sure your dogs will talk to my dogs as we go.
oh, oh yeah, this will be part of it. And then my
Perfect.
niece is actually playing with her in the background. So,
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you then. You've got all of this published work, all of this awesome stuff that you're doing. This is about process and specifically your process because I love
okay.
to talk to writers about their processes. What is the best time of day for you to write, and where do you write?
You know what? That has changed over time a lot.
Ooh.
I I used to be in my 20s and probably even my early 30s, like somebody who would obsessively write one story within the span of like, especially at night. It would really be like at night.
Ah.
I would go for hours. And if I didn't finish, it would really bother me and I'd start the next day. But even though I had never been in a partnership and or had kids until very, very recently, I kind of got assimilated into everyone else's schedule. And so now I'm very like 9 to 5. And then I want to like make it and be done with it, because I'm a professor. And when you're like, when you've got your grading, you want to get it over with and have your night. And so I'm kind of maybe age, like I'm kind of not as much a night rider. That sounds very 80s.
Yes, you need a car called Kit.
Yeah. Oh God, I loved that show when I was a kid. And so I guess I'm kind of a morning writer now. So maybe that would be like the companion show that I'm on because, I sound like I get up and I kind of wake up, I might read an article or two. And that's when I try to grab my time. Although, I travel a lot because my boyfriend's in Colorado and I'm touring off and on. I have different gigs. And then I teach. I have a full time face to face Western Illinois University professorship, in the corn. So I go
Mhm.
back and forth a lot. So I'm doing some writing when I can sometimes. Like, oh, I can grab 2 hours here, I can grab 2 hours there, and I steal time whenever I can. So even though I prefer the morning these days, sometimes it can be anytime whenever I get it. So
If you're given your druthers, where's the best place for you to write?
in all honesty, it is in my home at my desk. There are
Yeah.
times when I need to break it and I'm like, this is the wrong space. I'll go to a coffee shop. But really, it is at my desk where I do the best work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
So
wish mine
yeah,
was at my desk. That's my goal someday. My desk is
just
good
to
for
be
getting
like that.
everything else done except writing.
Well, because it becomes your work desk, right?
Yes.
And you know
Yes.
what? I had the privilege, and that's less so now. And that's why I very strictly separated like my office. I would grade there and I wouldn't take any of that home, even if I had to grade until 8 o'clock. And then my desk was for the creative writing. So, because I think that's what happens. Like you come to your desk and you're not free anymore,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. Yeah. And I also
So,
teach and I'm always grading at the desk. This is where I grade. So that's
yeah,
very good point. And
exactly.
how do you write? How do you compose? Are you longhand or computer?
With poetry, I think I started longhand, but I've always with prose, and I've even like the nonfiction people have like dragged me kicking and screaming into nonfiction. Like I was like, no, that's just how do you make the story go? Like it makes no sense to me. But now all prose because I go too fast. I have to and always have had to do it on the computer. I admire people who do long form because I know it supposedly taps into some part of your brain that isn't tapped into when you're typing. But I'm too fast, and I've just got to be on the computer for prose, and I pretty much don't write poetry anymore. So
Really?
what's sad. Yeah, I think it died. It's almost like bits and pieces will crop up here and there, but like you know how like if you're gay and you're like I used to date girls, and you're like, that was a long time ago. It almost is like the same thing. I'm like, I used to date poetry, but I know who I am. But every once in a while it does crop up like a line. We'll be like, oh, hello. But I
That's
think
really
it's
interesting.
because, yeah, it's just really strange. It's like it died. And then part of it I think is because the prose ate it. Like in the
Mm.
collection of short stories, the I borrowed some poetic technique for it. So I think
Mm.
that's part of why. Yeah.
So now it's kind of layered. I've never heard anybody say that before. That's really interesting. And how do you refill your creative well when you're running dry?
You know, I, it was funny. I just must not be on the same wavelength as other people on social media because everyone was really exploding about some blog by some writer who said, if you don't write every day, you're not a writer. And I'm like, who the fuck said that? Like, who is this? Because I
I
simply
want to
have
go
to
check
have.
that out so I can laugh at
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was like, who is this who said this? I made everyone so mad. It's actually a little funny.
it.
Like,
I've missed this particular blow up. I'm going to go look for
I
it.
know. I'm like, who is this? So, for me, I allow, like, there isn't a second of the day I don't feel guilty when I'm not writing. I'm just built that way.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm like, I just have to have a contemplative day. And that is going to be all right. And I'm going to ruminate a little and I'm going to cogitate a little and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to read and then later I'm going to write. But I always feel guilty when I'm not. So I know I'll come back to it.
There's that
So
Gloria Steinem quote that I love. Writing is the only thing that when I'm doing it, I don't feel like I should be doing something else.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, that's
I,
about right.
I have
Yes.
always felt that way. What is the absolute best or worst writing advice you've ever been given?
Let's see that I've been given. Well, I think every writer, I'm going to say something incredibly typical, but one of the most irritating things I think you'd agree, right, is when someone's like, "Why don't you write about that?"
Ugh,
You know, and I write because
yes.
I don't. And thank
And it
you
happens
for.
every day,
I know.
at
I'm
least
like,
every week.
yeah. I makes me want to tell a biologist, why don't you do physics? Because I am interested in that. That interests me. So
That's a
why are you
real,
doing this science?
that's a
So boring,
perfect analogy.
right? That's nice. You're an entomologist, but what about actually being a
Why
gynecologist?
don't you just do
That's
that?
yeah, that's more useful. You know, the world doesn't need to know about bees, but they need ladies to be healthy in their nether parts. Why don't you do that?
Oh my gosh, the next time I'm asked that in the fashion that makes the hair on the back of my neck rise, I'm going to spin it like that. Just
Just like
Do
that.
it.
Although
Do it.
it can be a funny joke. My wife always says to me, she'll come home like at least once a week. She goes, you know what you haven't thought about doing? I think you should write a bestseller.
Yeah. My
I was
auntie
like,
sat me down. Yeah. No, and it's, she did. She goes, my auntie too, she's like tiny, but I'm terrified of her. Like she's so scary. And I was telling my mom, I'm like, someday she will kill me. And my mom's like, don't say that. That's terrible. And then she's like got that little bit of gleam of truth in her eye. She knows it's true. But yeah, like my auntie sat me down one time. She said, Erika, let me tell you how it works. I'm like, oh, okay, best-selling auntie. You know, she's like, you write what people want, then you write what you want. I'm like, is that how it works? I'm like, what is what people want? You know, that's what we should all do. Like all writers should get together and write like a 5 billion page novel called What People Want.
what people want. And you know what? I'm pretty darn sure I could manage to fail at that too.
Yeah, you're supposed to.
I
You're
know.
supposed to fail at it. God, I don't know what people want to read. No one knows what anybody wants to read
Yep.
about.
Yep.
You know,
I
we
only know
just,
what I want to read about.
yeah, exactly. No, and thank God. You know,
Yep.
at least you know you don't know. You're not like ghosts. That's it. Only ghosts. You know, I hate when people do that. I'm like, okay, I know the last 50 novels we read are about ghosts, but how about a demon? Even,
Oh,
you know?
just a little bit of an open mind. Yes.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
That's funny. Your partner, though, I'm sure she just loves, or your wife, she just
Oh,
loves you and she just wants to be like,
and
oh,
now
thank you.
it's just a joke, and I'll agree with her.
Yeah.
And every time I'll be like, "Oh, you're
Yeah.
right. I had not thought of that." And in fact, I'm going to give Oprah a call. You know,
Yes.
I hadn't.
Boop, boop,
That's
boop.
exactly speed time.
Yeah.
What secret writing tip of awesomeness did you discover the hard way?
It's a really good question. I think ultimately I had a lot of trouble with plot. And teaching creative writing over the course of 10 years, I actually I convinced myself for a long time, oh, I'm terrible at plot, I'm terrible at structure. But when I'm working with my students' work, I realize like I'm not, because I'm like, oh, if you just make him do this here, then that will make sense later. And I'm
Hmm.
really good at it. It's just that I actually hate to say this because it's really poetic. The worst advice I probably ever got was El Doctoro, you only have to like writing a novel is like driving at
Right.
night. You only have to see the pavement in front of you that your headlights are illuminating,
Right.
something to that effect.
Yeah.
I'm misquoting. And I was like, yes, that's the way it should be. Because I felt like somebody who plots it out like J.K. Rowling, I'm just not that guy. I admire what she does. I actually read all the Harry Potters because my stepson, who's 9, finally was into reading because of Harry Potter. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll read them all. And, you know, it's like watching TV. It's just so like fun, you know?
Right.
So, but I really had to admire what she did with plot. But I know she plotted out like exactly. There were charts, and
Hmm.
for me, my brain would be like, "This is math. I don't want to," you know. But I think that I should have probably allowed myself a little bit of that unromantic, unintuitive, not character, just 100% character driven, because you know, like kind of plotted out just a little bit kind of thing, because I'm never going to be the explosive plot guy. And I don't think, I think when people have a great idea and they don't finish something, it's because they're not allowing their characters to make natural decisions.
Hmm.
But when you're writing a novel, because it took me 10 years for the first one, because I just was horrible at plot and structure, because I didn't realize actually I was capable of it. I just needed to sit down and really think about it, be unromantic, uninstinctual for at least 5 minutes, you know?
It's not easy to think about it, and I always realize that too when I'm talking to people about this, is that it's not fun because it's not fun. It That kind of heavy lifting in the brain is
Yeah.
annoying. I don't want to do that.
Yes.
I want to be in the flow. I want to be in the magic, but it helps
Yes.
so much. I
Yes.
also learned that the very, very hard way.
I think, you know, and I'm in academia, right? So even though there's definitely a newfound respect for, you know, I hate it when people say genre fiction, right? Because in the end, they talk about literary as if it's genre. That's not true. You know, what was passing for literary, what people imbued with literariness has been realistic fiction traditionally, right?
Right.
Like things that could happen every day. So to me, literary just means depth of theme, you know, attention to language and complex characterization. But I think when you're around so many people like really super highfalutin, and a lot of people are like, I'm an experimentalist, I'm postmodern, I've got lots of brand labels. they don't want to believe in that.
Yeah.
Because they believe
Yeah.
anything that has a coherent plot must be commercial and therefore bad. And I just don't think that's true.
I love that you don't think that's true. I am such a big proponent for excellent commercial fiction with incredible characters and depth of plot and depth of theme and all of that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you mind giving us a quick craft tip of any sort?
I think that the biggest, I mean, since, I did do the PhD school, for a long time, I regretted it deeply. I'm like, I have all this debt and I live in the middle of the corn. What was the point of that? And I realized how hard it is to get a tenure track job. And I'm like, I better shut up, So I was like, okay, I live in the corn, but I have a job and it's unionized.
Wow.
Unions matter.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? I mean, what our ones aren't unionized. So I've got a bug in my hair. That's good. So in any case, I think there was a part of me who finally realized, like, oh no, actually, there's this scholarly kind of part of my brain, and I wrote a couple articles called The Fourth Wave, and The Fourth Wave just was about Native American poetics, and then The Fourth Wave on Native American fiction was actually in the Writer's Chronicle. And what I was talking about them was like, in some ways, like what, when Native American critics, for example, were just entirely intellectual, and they're like, well, these are these differences about about Native American texts. And I'm like, I'm not sure. I want to see where that is on the page. And so just asking myself that question was really good, because I realized when I did that, and I'd talk to these people who were self-proclaimed experimentalists, I would be like, okay, but where is that on the page and why? What does it matter? And I realized it's a form and content question, right?
Right.
Like if you have like for example, the first story in Buckskin Cocaine is what someone might call experimental, because it's very language driven. And there's a lot of repetitions, because like I said, I sort of borrowed from poetic technique. And so there's repetition, and they're basically a series of interlinked vignettes. And it's because it's, there are four personalities housed inside one. And this person's like really unraveled all the time. And these personalities beat up on each other really hard. And there's almost a psychotic kind of effect to this. And I realized that the reason why this works as a series of interlinked vignettes, it would never work in this traditional action, plot, dialogue, description balance that I particularly prefer, actually, the older fashioned stuff, is because that would not get a hold of this person's mind. This person's mind is very fractured. So that's the content, and I try to have the form to match, So I think instead of like trying to belong to a school, like I'm this and my friends are that, you should ask yourself, what am I writing and what's the best form for this content, Which
is actually, I mean, it's such a good metaphor for life too. What is the best content and form I can bring to my sister's birthday is going to be different from what I bring to the classroom, is going to be, all of that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's your whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, everything.
What job will I not get fired at?
Speaking of jobs, on really bad days, if you couldn't be a professor or a writer, what would you be?
I realized that I got this sabbatical thing that people get, right, a few years ago, and that was like, I just know why people do write, like, F it, I'm just gonna, my niece is in the background, I'm just gonna write vampire books, whether I like it or not, because you have all this time to write, and that's it, and it's amazing. So in some ways I feel kind of like I just, as I know myself, would not exist at all if I were not a writer. A professor, it's nice and it helps in various ways, it's a great job, but part of me could not exist, I realized, very easily during my sabbatical, and it would not change who I am at all.
Yeah.
But if I absolutely couldn't be a writer and I had to live my life, and granted, I think a lot about, the life my grandmother had to live. She was like, had an arranged marriage. She was a janitor. She did all sorts of interesting, also hard jobs. But so I would have a lot of privilege that she doesn't. But I mean, when I was younger, I remember the first thing I wanted to be was inventor. So that's interesting. Vaguely thought about being a park ranger, which, I'm not sure. I think I'm a little too femme for that, if I'm honest with myself, even though I grew up in the country. I'd be like, it's a tech, so somebody else burn it. let alone a bear. But I have to admit, there are times, and this is going to sound really, really kind of funny, where I realized that I would be perfectly happy if I had extremely good math capabilities, and I would still be able to be who I am if I could be a theoretical physicist, because I abso-freaking-lutely love that so much.
Why?
So I feel like, you know, um, mm, a lot of for a lot of native people, and I think there are reasons for this, the idea of like religion and spirituality being separate, there didn't need to be this huge separation because there wasn't the same sense of oppression,
Mm-hmm.
of knowledge, although I'm sure a lot of people would disagree in many communities, but I think I'm very interested in the way in which, um, instead of like, physics basically says it's all part of the same reality. And that's kind of what pagan religions do. It's all part of the same reality. It's not this
Sure.
separation.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to say that, there's still incredibly huge mysteries that are like, quantum physics is insane. And so is astrophysics, I mean, it's just insane to think about gravitational waves being felt here. Recently they had them from 3 billion light years away because two black holes merged. That's basically, that to me is God. If there is a God, that is it. So I think I realized, like, in some ways, and this is going to make me sound a little Salinger-esque, except with the whole storing his pee and drinking it thing.
Thank goodness.
Like I think he realized like writing was a doorway to God, and then he kind of like went crazy, but he also kind of went towards Buddhism. And
Yeah.
I don't see myself in the same way, but I can say that if I had any mathematical ability, that to me is knowing the nature of reality. You know what I mean? And I think in the end that might be what I'm after, if I'm honest with myself.
Well,
So
I'm seeing a connection with everything that you do then, with the writing and with that particular desire. You're looking at the contents of the universe, right? And when you were a kid, you wanted to be an inventor because you wanted to make things in the universe. I really
yeah.
think that perhaps you've been the same person with the same goals
Right.
this whole time, and that's just me guessing from knowing you for 15 minutes. But
Right.
but that's not,
Except
those
for the
are
park ranger thing. That was, I think, like, I just want to get out of academia because actually it's really kind of rough out there.
exactly. I always wanted to live like one of those fire spotter, up in a tree. There's nothing to do all day except for look for forest fires.
Lighthouse keeper. The first time
Yes.
when I wanted to be a writer,
Yes.
the first thing that occurred to me was lighthouse keeper, and then I found out they're automated.
I know. Bridge
The
keeper. I
hell?
also wanted to be a bridge keeper. There is one bridge near us that has a house on top of it, and the guy lives there, and his one job is to
Really?
raise and lower the bridge over in Alameda 4 times a day in the summer. Yeah. He's
I'm like, why bother with residencies? Those are
Get a
terrible.
bridge keeper job.
Yeah, because you have all these people trying to hook up and be cool, and oh god.
Our bridge keeper. I don't know if he's still the same one, so I don't want to. But
Yeah.
he was an inveterate drinker too, so he wasn't actually very
Yeah.
good at raising the bridge. But he had one job.
Yeah. Well, so you kind of, you'd have to be really inclined. You have to
Yes.
be really inclined, or otherwise you would be like, God, I'm bored.
Yes.
I'm going to drink now.
Gonna have
So,
a beer on duty, right? Exactly.
yeah. Yeah, maybe that's why he took it.
So he could be alone and drink.
Yeah.
If you were starting over as a new writer today, what would you tell yourself as your young self writer?
That one was really hard because for years what I regretted, the MFA wasn't quite the big deal that it was. And I was also super chicken because both my parents had come from working class backgrounds, and we were basically middle class, but my dad was a drinker, and so he liked to spend his money on ladies and get rich quick schemes and booze. So we were middle class, but and so they did not want me to be a writer. They did not want me to be in English. They did not want that. So I would say, oh, no one's going to tell me how to write. But I wouldn't take creative writing classes until I'd had a couple of shitty poems published. And then during my PhD, I took a ton of workshops, and my dissertation was half creative, and I was publishing more. But there are times when I'm like, I should have had more tools in the toolbox earlier on. And right at the end of my PhD, I did get into University of Montana, which I didn't go because they didn't give me financial aid. And there have been years when I've deeply regretted that, or deeply regretted not doing an MFA in New York. But sometimes I think that maybe I was right. Maybe that I kind of instinctually knew I am a very deeply self-directed person. And I have to say, there was I'm going to say his name incorrectly, but Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Mm-hmm. Who,
reading...
by the way, is an also bot for you. If you look if you look at your book on Amazon, the also bot is Ta-Nehisi Coates. Yeah,
right.
I don't ask. That's great.
I saw that.
That's fantastic.
It used to be hot tub something. Hot tub.
Ta-Nehisi is better.
Yeah, I was like, what? That's weird. And it was for book of poetry too. Like, who is buying Indian Trains and like Hot Tub Summer the video?
Like, and why the vagaries of the Amazon algorithm.
Yeah, I was like, that's extremely mysterious.
But I'm sorry, I interrupted you about Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. But yeah, I saw him interviewed, and he was like, in my 20s, there were so many writers. In my 30s, there were lots of writers, but it started to narrow down by my 40s, because you literally cannot, you have to be like a bulldog to withstand the rejection, especially if you're queer, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a woman of color, especially if you're a woman of color and you're not writing anything that's familiar to audiences at all, which I kind of enjoy that. Like, I'm like, haha, you think this about Indians, like, here's something else,
Yeah.
But, people either, for Native Americans, they want to hear, I'm very poor and I'm from the reservation, but I got out. They want to hear traditional. Actually, I'm not from the reservation, but I went back in traditional and I found my traditional self. And here's how you too can be, a traditional Indian, right? I don't recognize any of that. I don't, I'm not from a reservation, but even my friends from reservations are like, what is this, So I think that's the thing. You just have to be. So sometimes I wonder, like, maybe I was right. I should have just kept on going like I have, so.
I believe in our deep down intuition. I really, really do. The way we get to the places we end up at is the way we're supposed to get there. Personally, I'm with you. I wish I hadn't put $50,000 into an MFA, but
right.
I regret that, but I'm glad that I'm here now. So yeah, cool.
But you shouldn't have to regret it. I mean, it's unfair. It's just utter bullshit that we pay for educations. I'm so angry. Yep. I'm so angry for my students. Sometimes, like, every once in a while, like every year, they're like, this year, we're telling you it's like $7,000 for tuition. I feel like literally every time I tear up and I feel choking feelings for them. I'm so mad. What? That's not cool.
I know.
That makes anyway.
I think that makes you a good teacher.
I hope so. Oh God, it just makes me want to punch everything.
Before you punch everything, what would you like to plug right now? What would you like to tell us about? Where can we find you? What should we be looking for?
Well, I've started writing regularly for Roar, the feminist magazine.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I'm writing nonfiction, like I said, and it kind of makes, I'm going to say something that I hope doesn't make me sound like a freaking douchebag, because I just was always like, oh, nonfiction. And I'm sure I just had very incorrect opinions about it and I didn't get exposed to the right things. But I have only perfected my craft of nonfiction because I was solicited to write it. Mm-hmm. And so it's something, but I have to say it's become something that I am more attached to than I realized. So, but in the end, like, I'm much more always going to be attached to fiction. And the thing that's coming out is Buckskin Cocaine, which is, the sort of seedy underside of the Native American film world. It's all these personalities who are just insane, who I kind of knew when I was at the Institute of American Indian Arts and hanging out with the film people.
Yeah.
And so that's coming out June 15th, and it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles,
Actually, and I think that your episode will be going out right about then. So in the show notes, I'll make sure I put all the links up. It's got a fantastic title. I can't wait to see it.
I know, that's my friend Sherwin Bitsui suggested that. I'm like, I don't know what to call this insane thing.
It's fantastic. It's it's grabbing. Yeah.
Sherwin did it.
Well, congratulations on that. That's going to be awesome.
Thank you. Honestly, writing it, I was like, who is going to publish this thing? And yet the first person I sent it out to took it, But honestly, it really is so weird and about such a part of Indian life that people do not care about. So I was like, no one will ever publish this. But actually, it got, all the stories were taken almost immediately. And so, there's some energy to that thing.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to pick it up.
Thank you
so much for spending this time with me and with the podcast. Absolutely. It's been a joy talking to you. And I find you incredibly inspiring. And now I want to go write something awesome.
Oh, good. We'll do it.
I will. All right. Thanks, Erika. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All righty. Bye.